Prime Minister, the NATO summit is just around the corner. What is the minimum Ukraine should get for you to be satisfied from that summit?
Well, the talks are ongoing. What is important that we go beyond Bucharest wording. For us, it is very important that we agree on, practical steps, how Ukraine gets into NATO. I mean, a few weeks ago, I was reading a book about NATO's history, since the wall of the Berlin Wall. And what was interesting, how, Visegrad countries and the Baltic countries were accepted to NATO. And then the US president was saying, first if they will be members, but then it changed when they will be members of NATO. And I think that should be the similar attitude towards Ukraine. It's not if, but when. Of course, we understand it can't happen when the war is going on, but we have to have, clear pathway how Ukraine gets there.
So talk about when. Could we see something leading up to the Washington summit next year then?
Well, it's hard to tell. It has many conditions. I mean, the question is how this war is going. But there are practical steps that we can do in between. I'm of the opinion that we should end the gray zones in Europe, because gray zones are a source of conflict and war. So if we want to have peace, then NATO's membership is the only security guarantee and the cheapest security guarantee that there is.
There is some talk about the sort of Germany option, talking about Germany during Cold War, that the West was covered by NATO, the East not. Could you see such a division of Ukraine, where the Ukrainian part that is governed by the Ukrainian government can be part of NATO, can be part of Article 5, and the one that isn't covered yet?
Well, I think it is most important that we understand that aggression can't pay off. I mean, that we don't recognize that those territories that are currently occupied by Russia anyway belong to Russia. I mean, the end of the war is when Russia goes back to Russia. If we say that, you get some territories, then aggression actually pays off. Of course, you lose some people on the way, but in dictatorship, they don't really count. So it is a very bad signal for the international law and also the security of the whole world if that pays off. That is most important to keep in mind. But I mean, clear steps for Ukraine to join after the war is over, and during the war, what we can give them as well. Considering that no NATO country really wants to enter this war.
But okay, so what are the things we can give them during the war?
What we have given so far, I mean, we have given military aid to Ukraine, and I sometimes think if we would have given all the military aid we are giving now already in January 2022, like Estonia did, or even February 2022, maybe we would have already seen the end of this war, because Russia would have realized earlier that it can't win this war. But we have to keep our stance and do that as long as it takes to be behind. And this is what we can give, but it's also the agreements or that separate NATO's allies are giving to Ukraine. It's not NATO as an organization.
But then again, do you understand the Ukrainian frustration? We hear now quite a lot of complaints coming from Ukraine that, okay, you in the West, you talk about weapons, but where are they? Do you understand that?
I understand. I mean, what we have decided, we should also, our promises we should keep and we should deliver. Of course, the question is related very much to the defense capabilities of Europe as such, and I've been advocating for increase of the defense expenditure in Europe. I mean, if you take the time of 1999 until 2021, the defense expenditure of Europe increased by 19.7%. For US, the same period, 65.7%, and for Russia, 292% defense expenditure increase. So why I'm saying this is that we have given a lot to Ukraine, but we also have to replenish our own stocks. And that requires for our defense industry to speed up production. And that goes hand in hand what we also have to give Ukraine. I mean, my proposal was the 1 million artillery shells that we can procure together and send to Ukraine directly. I'm glad to see that some part of it has already been fulfilled. I mean, we have done our share, but there's still so much room for improvement, because the other side, the defense industry, says that we don't have enough orders to boost the production. So I think we should do that. What my worry is that maybe not all the allies have realized the security situation where we are in, that some are hoping that, you know, this problem will just go away. We don't really have to invest in defense. I mean, compared to 1988, when all of the NATO's allies invested 2% of their GDP in defense because the threat was real.
But I understand, okay, Estonia will spend 3% of defense, GDP on defense. But I remember the Wales summit in 2014 when everyone said, well, by 2024, which is next year, yes, we all should have 2%. Yeah. Maybe a third have reached that one. So why should we believe NATO?
No, this is a very good question. I think this is the last year where we can actually talk about the defense spending, because next year it's going to be Washington summit, it's going to be elections in US, and we can't talk about that anymore. We have to show that we have done our share. And of course, I understand in democracies it is difficult because you have the domestic problems kicking in. And as a prime minister, I could list you so many things that I can spend the money on. But the defense situation is such that I don't have a choice. I mean, I bring you this one example. In 1933, Estonia's defense expenditure was record low because there was no political support for this. And in 1939, the defense expenditure was increased on paper by 100%, but it was already too late because the war started and nobody was fulfilling the orders anymore. So, so my point is that if, you know, COVID crisis, we had the possibility to react when the crisis was here. In defense, we can't react when the crisis is here. We have to prepare before. And these are the times where we have to prepare. So this is my call to all the allies to really, really do more. And also I've proposed on the European level to do this defense initiative, that fine, let's do this together. We can, you know, procure this together. Then the question is, of course, where should we take the funds? And there we can also be creative and think outside of the box. But the point being that we have to mutually understand that this is the problem that we have to deal with. Let's find solutions to that.
Another thing that's going to happen at the NATO summit is obviously the agreement on defense plans. Will these defense plans actually defend the Baltic states from day one? Are you confident of that? Because before, it would have been that the Russians would have run over this place and then the allies would have come to your help.
Liberate,
so will you be defended from day one now?
Yes, we got very strong decisions in Madrid to change from deterrence posture to defense posture. So what it means is that we are able to defend ourselves together with our allies from the first moment, from the first inch. But it goes also you know, together with the defense spending. So, I mean, one is the plans and the other one is the execution, the implementation of those plans. So when we are talking about pre-positioned equipment, ammunition, then you need to have those as well, which means that you need to invest more in order to fulfill those plans, in order for the troops, European troops, to be combat ready.
Let's talk about the Prigozhin mutiny. Is Russia more dangerous right now after this mutiny for Estonia and the Baltic region?
Well, Russia has been dangerous and unpredictable and is dangerous and unpredictable now. So there is no change in our posture, actually. What happens inside Russia is, of course, their internal matter that we don't have influence on. But we have to, you know, make our plans. I wouldn't go I mean, those who say that, oh, is Russia now more dangerous? Come on, if you look what they have done in Ukraine, I mean, they have destructed, I mean, there's total destruction of big cities. And this was, if you say so, under stable Russia. So I don't think that it can get any worse, and we shouldn't really concentrate on that. And I think it is something that also Russia wants us to believe that, oh, let's not rock the boat now because Russia is becoming unstable. Again, going back in history, when Gorbachev was in power and the Soviet Union was there, then also there was a talk and also work towards keeping Gorbachev in the position, because the Western allies thought that, oh, let's not rock the boat and we don't know what kind of chaos will follow. I mean, we wanted to, restore our independence and freedom, and we used that window of opportunity. That was not a good thing, bad thing, but a good thing for us. So I wouldn't so much concentrate on that, but I would concentrate on our resolve that hasn't changed.
But will you have to focus more on Belarus, considering that he's now in Belarus and Wagner is there as well? Is that a change for you?
We have considered Belarus together with Russia as the co-aggressor since the first day. So they're clearly in this together, and there's no change there. I mean, Wagner was very interesting. We had the the European Council summit last week, and one of the prime ministers was very well explaining, you can't build your security on the mercenaries because they always go to that person who pays you more. I mean, again, I wouldn't concentrate on that. I think that doesn't change our resolve because we have always considered Belarus together with Russia.
You obviously went to strengthen your border. But I wonder, and I know this is a sensitive question in Estonia, but are you doing things internally as well, considering that you have a fairly large ethnic Russian population here as well?
First, I must start with the facts. So in 1922, our Russian population was 3.2%. So they are not the ethnic minority that has been here. After the end of occupation, it was 30%, because Estonians were deported to Siberia and Russians came in. So I think this is important to understand. But in despite of the history, we say here that we might have a different history, but we have a common future. So we concentrate on that future. And of course, our Russian-speaking minority is not a homogeneous group. A majority of them feel that Estonia is their home, and whom do you protect when you have problems. And to illustrate that is that we don't have riots on the street like you have in some other countries where they are maybe less aware of the information wars that are going on. So far, I mean, we're trying to concentrate our common future, and our Russian-speaking minority, especially those who are living closer to Russia's border, who see across the river the life on the other side, or even go and cross the border, they see that the life on Russia's side is so much worse than the life on the European or Estonian side. So they understand that this propaganda that they see on television is not really correct.
Would the Polish Prime Minister Morawiecki said that he wanted part of the NATO nuclear sharing program. Is that something Estonia would consider as well?
No, we haven't had discussions over this. I think in NATO we are allies, and some countries have nuclear weapons, the others don't, so some are positioned elsewhere. I think it's our collective defense that works, so it doesn't really matter in this regard. It matters that we execute those military plans that the SACEUR proposes, and we fulfill them with equipment and required needs.
You talked about grey zones. And of course, Eastern Ukraine is a grey zone, but there are other grey zones in Europe as well. Georgia is another one. How do you see the situation in Georgia right now?
Well, it's complicated. I mean, what is the difference between Georgia and Ukraine? And I think Georgia is where Ukraine was years ago when they had the Orange Revolution. So that they also widely consider Europe as their future, but that also requires reforms on their side. So it is, a complicated relationship, seems to me, with government and people on the streets, but we are following it very closely.
But Ukraine and Georgia used to go hand in hand when
Yes.
it came to NATO. And now it seems that they have decoupled a little bit. Why is that?
It is because I think the leadership of Georgia right now does not really believe in that, so they don't really push that agenda that much.
Believe in NATO membership?
Believe in NATO membership. I mean, it was the GlobeSec conference where the Prime Minister of Georgia was saying that NATO is at fault for the war in Ukraine, although, I mean, it's a defense alliance. I mean, NATO has not done anything. Ukraine has not done anything to really provoke Russia to attack them. I mean, even Prigozhin said that's a false narrative. I mean, and he was saying that so clearly from his speech, it was felt that they don't believe in that.
Moldova is another place, another grey zone. Now, how do you see this country? It's obviously constitutionally neutral, but they are present at the NATO summit as well. And if Ukraine joins, they will be sandwiched between two NATO allies, Romania and Ukraine. So how do you see this? Is that a problem?
It is not a problem. I mean, for us, it was very clear. I mean, we lost our freedom and independence because we tried to be neutral in 1940s. And hence we decided on 1991 that we will never be alone again, never without allies and friends. So that means that we are not neutral. Moldova, I think, goes hand in hand with Ukraine because it is really in the middle, but it's their choices, of course. NATO or NATO can't, it is the decision of countries whether they want to become members of NATO or not. It is not up to NATO to decide, but the other ways.
But you would prefer they shed their neutrality and join the side?
I would prefer that they are with Ukraine, considering that they are in between, but they have, huge worries. Of course, in European level, we consider them together. I mean, when we talked about the candidate status, we also, together with Ukraine, also Moldova was given that because they go together. Considering it's a small country, it's in between, but it's up to their decision makers.
Finally, Western Balkans. I know this is a region that we maybe sometimes have forgotten in the Ukrainian war, but right now we see real problems, especially between Serbia and Kosovo. Should NATO play a larger role there? Are you supportive of this sort of more of an international conference that Charles Michel and Edi Rama, the Albanian Prime Minister, have talked about? How do you see? How can this be solved? Because it's clearly a problem.
Yeah, it's clearly a problem that we shouldn't overlook, and I think there are major efforts done to trying to bring the tensions down in that region, and there are many players who try to do that. So of course NATO has a role as the K4 is keeping the peace there, and we also have to keep in mind that Russia really wants to flame this conflict in order to get the attention away from Ukraine to the Western Balkans. So there are efforts made, and I'm very grateful for those who are really making the efforts. I know that the Benelux prime ministers went or are going to the region to trying to bring the parties together. It was one of the Western Balkan summit, European summit, that one of the prime ministers of one Western Balkan country said that, what is the positive side of Europe is that, we are around this table. We didn't talk to each other 70 years. And now we are here and we are talking to each other. That is already a good thing. And I think Kosovo and Serbia, when, the parties talk to each other, it's easier to solve the tensions that are there.
But should it be moved to another level? Because it clearly seems like the EU, NATO, it doesn't work. They're not even talking to each other anymore.
The efforts are made, to make them talk to each other again. And the problems are there. So clearly we have to make more efforts. And I really feel that all the parties are trying to make those efforts to bring the tensions down. Whether these are successful, of course, depends on both parties as well. But I don't think that they need, again, to have a huge conflict there.
Prime Minister, thank you very much.
Thank you.